Hey guys, welcome to Composed with Richard Schreiber. I have a huge tip for you today. It's about how to create a complete track in a couple of hours. Now, I feel like I've got this down to a T, but I had many years of spreading a whole track over days, possibly even weeks, because I couldn't finish it off or because I was spending a lot of time doing unimportant things. So I thought I would share some knowledge with you today. So for instance, I am writing some dark fantasy stuff for sort of early teen, mid-teen family films. Kind of magical Danny Elfman, trailerized Danny Elfman, that is, type, kind of Tim Burton-esque, weird and wonderful, but dramatic. And, it's a full orchestra with perhaps some hybrid elements. So we're talking at least 60 tracks. And you might think, actually, this is going to take me ages. How am I going to write a whole thing for a whole orchestra? Because you take shortcuts. Shortcuts are not a bad thing when it comes to producing music. I'll tell you why. Because actually they're not shortcuts, they're time savers. Shortcuts have this kind of like bad connotation, but if you reframe it as something to save you time, it's really important. The first thing you need to do is make sure you have a template. Your template needs to include all of the instruments, all of the articulations, all of the effects you plan to use. Because then if you're writing a whole track, you're even writing a whole album, from track to track, you don't spend any time looking for sounds. You have all the sounds you need at your fingertips. Second tip is have your drag and drop samples already in the template. Now this is a interesting one because with regard to kind of trailerized sounds, I use drag and drop samples. I don't use the actual instruments that have the samples in them. I take the samples out from the back end and I load them into my Logic session so that I can align all of the hits to the tempo. Now the reason I do this is to save me time, because then all the samples are already in there. Step 3, you have the templates, you have your sounds, now it's a case of writing. This third, and this is a really important trick, is to sketch the entire track out. So you just go, okay, well this is going to be my introduction, and you play a melody or a drone or a chord sequence, boom, act 1 done, 30 seconds. Act 2, 45 seconds, span that chord sequence out again. This is where you can either have your complete chord sequence that you've already shown us or a new chord sequence. Sketch it out just on the piano or even just using hits, boom, 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 boom. Then Act 3, do the same thing, sketch it out, and then you tag on your ending, which is usually kind of symphonic, holding on to the what's the chord I'm thinking of? Holding on to the dominant or subdominant or whatever chord you're holding on to, the penultimate chord, hold on to that, repeat, drop to the root, boom, 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 we're done. We have sketched out the cue in a matter of minutes. Now, I obviously I kind of like skim over the idea of like having your chord sequence ready. That's because I tend to kind of suggest that people stop overthinking chord progressions, because we're all using the same blooming chord progressions anyway. Just do a chord progression you like. And obviously the certain genres have certain chord progressions you go to. So in dark fantasy, you can sort of lean towards more of the kind of like interesting classical or even interesting modes from film scores like Lydian flat 7 or Mix Lydian flat 6 or something like that. So you can lean towards these different modes. So there will be that, but just choose a chord sequence you like, and then sketch it out. And those are the things that are going to save you the most time. Now, the other thing is understand what you're going to be copying and pasting from instrument to instrument. This is the fourth tip. Understand that, okay, well, if I'm going to be writing and playing in a string line, the modulation is going to be probably the same throughout the entire string. So copy and paste that string line and just move the MIDI notes, because actually often moving the MIDI notes takes less time than it does fiddling with modulation. The same with the brass. Establish what the brass are going to be doing, think about it in your head, visualize it very quickly, just go boom, 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 copy and paste the modulation. So the modulation is the thing that takes the time to draw in my experience. You might be the other way around. You might be like, actually the modulation is a piece of cake for me, it's the MIDI notes that take a while. So then in that case you think about what is going to be save you the most time when it comes to copy and pasting. And because you have the chord sequence already sketched out, you know what the bass line is going to be, you know what the harmonic notes, the harmonies are going to be, you know what the melody is, you possibly know what the counter melody is, and then you choose which instrument is going to take the melody, when, etc., etc. And then it's just a case of going MIDI there, MIDI there, MIDI there, MIDI there, and just moving the MIDI around, and boom, you have a pretty much finished track. The last element is details, which sometimes you can't rush, but actually that's when you take a break. You've sketched your entire cue, take a break, come back to it, because then you'll hear where the details need to go. You've had the time, you've had the space, the flow will come back in, you will understand where the details need to go. So those are my tips for you to be able to write an entire trailer cue in 2 hours. Practice it. And this is what the wonderful thing about writing albums within a certain genre, because then you suddenly start to get quicker and quicker. I find that the first couple of tracks I write in an album usually take me longer. They usually take me like a day, all in all, so like 6 hours. But then the last couple of tracks usually take me between 1 and 2 hours to bash out, because I know the tones, I know the sounds, I'm free. And that is often because I have the template, I have the palette, I've sketched out quickly. I'm not so precious about those last tracks. Try it, guys. It's a huge time saver, and it will increase your writing speed very quickly.